Hello everyone and welcome to another cybersecurity video with me, Kieron Newsham, the Chief Technologist for Cybersecurity at Softcat. Today we're talking about all things network and connectivity, with a hint of cyber, of course. I've got my good friend and colleague Tom Rowley with me. Tom, do you want to do a quick introduction, mate?
Yeah, so my name is Thomas Rowley. I am the Chief Technologist for Networking and Connectivity here at Softcat.
Wonderful. Jump straight in there, mate. I've got 3 questions for you. Firstly, I'd like to talk about wide area network. I think what we've seen is firewalls have changed in terms of how they're utilised by customers. So they're moving lower in the stack, if we think of it in an OSI term. They're being used more for routing. They've got more routing power, more compute power. But is that because of a security reason, or is that because of a networking reason? What do you think?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So you look at firewalls over the past 3 to 5 years, more and more functionality have been started to put into them. But I think that's also because of the use cases and the security maturity of some of our customers and organizations looking to implement them in different ways. I think a really good example of that is we used to have just a perimeter firewall at the edge of a network, right? And yes, that did some security stuff, but it also did some NATing and some segmentation. We then started to get to a point where we really started to drill down further into that segmentation story, and people wanted to have control points, for example, in between their local area network and their data center. Now, when we talk about routing coming into that world, and we think about the changes that we've started to see in technology, and that's mainly driven by that cloud adoption, SaaS adoption, hybrid working adoption. Yet so much more traffic is getting pumped out towards the internet than ever before. So what we're seeing is actually the router playing a much bigger role than it has ever played in organizations. And this is where we're starting to see really SD-WAN start to take over the market. I'm actually thinking that it's probably going to become quite commoditized in the next few years. And there's a few different ways that the market's approaching that. I think you do still have the kind of point solutions where you've got a hardware-based firewall, but it's got SD-WAN functionality on it.
Yep.
Something we're starting to see in the market more now is more of a platform play for security, which brings those technologies in and much more. So you're looking at things where we're actually now looking at cloud-based firewalling, cloud-based routing, and starting to add in even other controls like DLP and CASB into those single solutions.
So routers aren't dead?
Absolutely not, they are thriving.
That's an interesting way to describe routers, mate. Keeping in the connectivity theme and obviously wide area networks, internet, software-defined wide area networks have a lot to do with the question I'm about to ask. So, cloud. If I think about cloud off the top of my head in terms of what do I need to worry about in security in terms of connectivity, I've got on-prem to cloud. I've got both on-prem to cloud in terms of my back end for engineering development, my front end for customers. I've got potentially multi-cloud, which is cloud to cloud. I've also got cloud back to on-prem. It gets quite complicated, my friend. So
yes,
I know obviously you do a lot with cloud networking. I talk a lot about securing the cloud. Is it getting more complicated because of the things that we're doing in networking, or is it getting simpler? What's your opinion?
It's definitely getting more complex, and I'll refer to something I was talking about earlier, that cloud adoption, SaaS adoption, hybrid working adoption, and they're all kind of linked, right? Because if you think about it, I know you were talking about different locations like back-end systems or on-premise data centers, but the reality of it is whether it's a public or a private cloud, our workloads can live in so many places now. And not only can they live in those places, but they're also agile. They can move around workloads now to live in AWS one day, Azure the next, and maybe we'll do the storage for that on-premise because that might be cost-driven. So what that means is you've got this diverse world of actually applications and services moving around. But also when we look at our users and devices, they're also moving around. So you're absolutely right, there's an infinite amount of ways that these two things can connect now. And what sits in the middle of all that? The network, be that a LAN, be that a WAN. And through that complexity, I mean, look, what do we do in IT? We try to simplify it, either with software going over the top of it that's intelligent, or we centralize controls where we can. We're starting to now see actually WAN become much more of a platform play for customers. So where they can break out, for example, centrally into multiple cloud environments, where they might be able to host a colo right next to where their cloud connectivity is, start to have things like centralized firewall controls on there. And the actual underlay connectivity and overlay, they are very intrinsically related now. I mean, you look at software-defined wide area networking, the ability to extend my policy in a local area network out over the internet actually gains some visibility, some control of that world, which historically I just wouldn't have. That's one big driver. I'd also argue that SD-WAN, I said before, it's going to become commoditized. It is kind of like putting a plaster over a gaping wound, right?
Yeah.
It does not fix the internet. The internet by nature is underperforming, under-reliable. SD-WAN optimizes that. We are now starting to see, as a result of that, a rise in private connectivity, which by nature, with traffic not going over the internet, is intrinsically more secure, but you can also add more controls on top of it.
So security is becoming a little bit more challenging to sort out in the cloud in terms of connectivity.
Correct, yes, but there are absolutely technologies there where we can live with those security controls.
Sure, yeah. I mean, you mentioned visibility a fair few times there, mate. I know this is probably your favourite topic at the moment, which is observability.
Yes.
I think the interesting thing from a cyber perspective on observability is we have been and do conduct observability activities, operations, whatever you want to call it. And we've done that for quite a while in the SOC, in the Security Operations Centre. We need the right information to the right people in a timely fashion so they can then act fast and accurately to make the right decisions, because that's what SOC analysts do in my world. Is there, with what's happening in networks, you effectively you want to be more proactive than just monitoring. Is there going to be some sort of clash or whatever you want to call it in terms of, are we all collecting the same type of data but using it for different reasons?
Yeah, it's a really good question, right? And I think the first bit on that I'll pick into is, you're absolutely right. Security is probably, although we don't have a load of security vendors in the market saying we are observability for security, right? The reality is they've done it for a very long time. But think about that. I mean, that's gathering logs from all over an environment to give me visibility of exactly what you said, that risk, so that I can remediate and secure it. Now, as networking kind of feeds into that, the rise and difference between just monitoring and observability is, monitoring, I think about that as looking at islands of technology. So what is all the logs that I'm coming into my scene from a security perspective? That's great. What's my experience like on my end user devices? That's great. What's my network performance? That's great. They are all monitoring solutions. Observability is about pulling that all together and seeing it as an ecosystem of technology, how it's all working together, where we've got interdependencies, ultimately so we can drive down to the point of who's responsible for fixing it, where is the issue, and how do we get to a point of back to normality really quickly. Now, it's not probably going to be a silver bullet, single solution that's going to cover your whole observability stack. And this is where we're starting to see now customers actually looking more towards having a presentation layer or a single source of truth that all parts of IT can interact with and work operationally efficient to get to a point of resolution. In my world, you talked a bit about yours, this is a massive thing in networking because the network will always get blamed first. So part of it's about proving innocence, but also a big part of it is about changing a bit of the culture of IT teams and getting to a point where they can all work off that single source of truth to be as operationally efficient as possible.
Makes sense, mate. I think, so, you know, we've covered quite a lot there, so thank you very much, my friend. To summarise then, routers are not dead.
They're not dead. They're thriving.
They're thriving. Routers are thriving, but fundamentally, things like SASE, SSE, Zero Trust Architecture, how we deliver services, applications to our customers, to our user bases, is changing the way that we deploy and use firewalls, which is changing the way that wide area networks are currently functioning in terms of how we connect to cloud, on-prem, do we need inter-office connectivity, etc. Secondly, we talked about, the cloud's actually getting complicated. I think just on the point of how we're delivering things to customers, a lot of it's going to be SaaS-based, software as a service now. I think the connectivity piece within cloud actually offers up an opportunity, you just mentioned in observability, to work closer together with cybersecurity teams. So networking and cyber 100% need to be on the same page in terms of cloud networking, cloud edge. And then lastly, it's all a data problem, isn't it, mate?
Yeah.
Observability is obviously going to be a huge thing for networking teams and NetOps, but we've got a part to play, I think, in cybersecurity in terms of any learnings that we've done operationally to be more proactive. But not just that, we actually have a lot of data that is probably quite useful to those observability platform solutions and teams that are using it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Thank you, mate. Really appreciate your time.
Pleasure.
And thank all of you for watching, and we hope to see you soon.